So the three methods we're going to discuss is discount loan, interest-only loan, and amortized loan. Now the first loan, the discount loan, in this type of loan, you actually don't have to pay anything until the final year. Okay, so you don't pay principal or interest up until the final year, where you have to pay both principal and interest in one big lump sum end. That's the first option. Second option is the interest-only loan, and as the name suggests, each year you only have to make payments for the interest, so you don't pay any principal, and then in the final year, the principal and the final interest is due. And finally, we have the amortized loan, where you actually make equal periodic payments of the principal and interest. Okay, and throughout each year, you're actually paying off some of the principal, unlike the other two options. But let's take a look at what that looks like. So let's consider this example here. So we're comparing all three. So Roseanne wants to borrow $40,000 for a period of 5 years. So the lender offers her a choice of three payment structures. Okay, so the first payment structure is to pay all of the interest, 10% per year, and principal in one lump sum at the end of year 5. Can you remember what type of loan that is? I'm sure you can. Okay. Second option is to pay the interest rate of the 10% per year for 4 years, and then a final payment of interest and principal at the end of the 5th year. Okay, so that sounds like we're paying only interest for the first 4 years, and then the end we pay principal and interest. So hopefully we remember what that type of loan is called. And finally, we can pay 5 equal payments at the end of each year, inclusive of interest and part of the principal. Okay, so that example, or that option, we're actually paying some of the principal throughout the 5 years. So what does that look like? Well, let's take a look at it in a little more detail. So under which of these three options will Roseanne pay the least interest and why? And we're going to calculate the total amount of payments and the amount of interest paid under each alternative. So remember, the first option was the discount loan. Okay, so remember, we're going to be paying everything at the end, not paying anything throughout the 5 years until the end of the loan. So in this case, we're trying to figure out the future value in year 5 of that present value, that $40,000. So we're basically taking the principal, which is the $40,000, and we're adding all of the interest that's accumulated. So our total payment will be the $64,000. Okay. Now subtract the $40,000 in interest, and we're left with about $24,420 of interest that we're paying. Okay. So note that $24,000. Let's compare it to the next option. So when we pay the interest-only method, again, in this case, we are paying some interest. We're paying $4,000 every year, which is the 10% of the $40,000. Okay, so from year 1 to 4, we pay our $4,000. That's all we have to pay. But at the end, or at year 5 payment, okay, we have to pay back our principal, right? And we still have to pay that interest, the $4,000 of year 5. Okay, so we're paying $44,000 in year 5 plus the $16,000 that we paid from 1 to 4. So in total, we pay $60,000 for this loan. And remember, what was the principal? You got it. The principal was $40,000. Okay, so we subtract that, and we know that we've paid 20% of, or $20,000 of that 60 is interest. So if you compare, it looks like this method we're paying a little bit less interest than our discount only. And we can talk about that in a second as to why. And finally, we have an amortized loan. Okay, so in an amortized loan, we're not only just paying the interest, but we're also paying some of the principal every year. So in this case, what we do is we pay an equal payment. Okay, so our equal payment is $10,000. Okay, so we actually pay this every single year. Okay, so not only are we paying off our interest, but we're also paying off some of our principal. And as a result of that, our total payment is only $52,000. So it's much less than any other option. And what that means is we're paying less interest on our loan, okay? So that explains the different options, and you can see we're paying a little bit less in our amortized loan. And ultimately the reason for that is the more that you pay off your principal earlier, the less interest you have to pay. So if you recall, in the discount loan, we didn't pay anything for the first 4 years. So as a result, we have to pay more in year 5. With the interest-only loan, we only paid the interest from 1 year to 1 to 4, but we still didn't pay off that principal at all, so it's a little bit more. Finally, with the amortized loan, because we're actually paying off the principal throughout the 5 years, we end up paying a bit less. Now, in regards to an amortization, there is a way to set up an amortization schedule that's going to help us see what we're paying off, okay? And we'll take a look at it in just one moment. But really, the idea of this is it's helpful so we can understand what we're owing throughout the years that we have our loan, okay? Now, we will be doing an example in Excel, so don't worry too much about computing the numbers, but the way that it works is ultimately, again, what we're going to figure out is, first is we're going to figure out what is our equal payment, okay? So again, we have a $40,000 loan over 5 years at a rate of 10%, okay? So we want to figure out what is our periodic equal payment that we're making every year, and that's, in this case, it's going to be $10,551, give or take. Now, in this question, we want to know what is the loan payoff amount at the end of year 2. So this is when it's a great opportunity to create an amortization schedule so we can answer that question. Now, this is what it looks like, and we'll briefly go over the process. But when you're creating your schedule, the first thing you can punch in once you figure out your payment is you know that you're going to be making your payments equally every year. So once you have your years down, you're going to type in all your payments, okay? Now the question is just figuring out how much of this payment, is it interest, is it principal, okay? So once you have your payment, you're going to start with your beginning balance. So we know that the loan originally is $40,000. And really think about the balance as the balance of your principal. So how much of your principal do you owe? So you owe $40,000 at the beginning. And what we're trying to figure out is what our ending balance is of every year. Since we know our payment, we have to figure out a few more things and we can get our ending balance. So first thing you want to do is figure out the interest on our loan. So in this case, since we still owe $40,000, we're going to multiply that by 10% and we'll get our interest, okay? So once we figure out how much interest we're paying and we know what our payment is, if we subtract the payment from our interest, that's going to give us our principal reduction. So that, in other words, it's going to tell us how much of this payment is principal. So once we know that, then we can figure out our ending balance because we subtract our principal reduction from the beginning balance and we're left with our ending balance. So again, this ending balance is how much we owe in our principal, the actual loan itself. So we've gone from $40,000 now to $30,000 at the beginning of year 2, okay? And we'll repeat the process. Basically, we're going to multiply this beginning balance by our interest, which in this case, again, was 10%. So we're going to get our interest. So 10% of $33,000 is about $3,300. So once we know our interest, we can subtract that from our payment, and that gives us our principal reduction. Once we know our principal reduction, we can subtract our beginning balance from our principal reduction, and that will give us our ending balance. Okay, and you can actually go through the process. Eventually, your ending balance should be 0. What's good to note, okay, is that you can notice that the interest that we pay each year actually gets reduced. And the reason because of that is because we're paying less. We've paid off our principal, so we're actually, in a way, our loan is getting smaller. So our interest that we pay off is getting less. And our principal actually increases. So what that means is that as our interest decreases, the more of our total payment is going to be paying off our principal. Now, What was the question? Well, the question was, what was the loan payment amount at the end of year 2? Well, we can take a look at our ending balance here. So let's say, for instance, we want to conclude our loan early. And we're at the end of year 2. If we pay $26,000, then we know that our loan has been finished.